Yes.
Welcome to the celebration of Earl's life. I am so honored that you are all here. You are a testimony to the fact that Earl's touch was as wide as it was deep. And I'm sure that his family is so very blessed by your presence. Thank you. I want to remind everybody that there is a sign-in book, so if you didn't get a chance to do that, please sign in so that later, after all of the hoopla is done, Earl's family will be able to reflect with gratitude after this is all settled down a little bit. And at the end of the service, the family will go to the office, which is on the left side of the hall, to greet you and to hear your words, and then afterwards we'll have a little potluck sort of thing. And in the order of service, Hillary is going to go first, and then Bud will go. But I did just want to welcome everybody, and Sally is going to open us with Serenity.
Hi, my name's Sally, and please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you.
I'd like to bring up Hillary.
I'm Hillary. This is a reading from Joshua Abraham Heschel. The search for reason ends at the known. On the immense expanse beyond it, only the sense of the ineffable can glide. It alone knows the route to that which is remote from experience and understanding. Neither of them is amphibious. Reason cannot go beyond the shore, and the sense of the ineffable is out of place where we measure, where we weigh. We do not leave the shore of the known in search of adventure or suspense, or because of the failure of reason to answer our questions. We sail because our mind is like a fantastic seashell, and when applying our ear to its lips, we hear a perpetual murmur from the waves beyond the shore. Citizens of two realms, we all must sustain a dual allegiance. We sense the ineffable in one realm. We name and exploit reality in another. Between the two, we set up a system of references, but we can never fill the gap. They are as far and as close to each other as time and calendar, as violin and melody, as life and what lies beyond the last breath.
Thanks, Hillary. So a little bit later, Earl's family is going to come up and share some of their memories of Earl growing up. Save the best for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Earl's life with Virginia, and then the rest of us. So Earl and Virginia met for the first time in 1978. And they didn't know it then, but 17 or so years later, they would decide to go out for coffee for a date that lasted almost 20 years. They're still on that coffee date, actually. For the first part of their lives, they lived together in Denver. And then at the beginning of the early 2000s, they decided that they wanted to move. So they went around, they went through Colorado, and they went to New Mexico and Utah, looking for just the right place to continue their lives together. But they realized that they didn't want to be too far away from their family and their friends, and so they landed here in Pueblo. Proof of God's grace. They spent a lot of time working on the house that they shared on Washington, and they continued to build their life. Now, part of their lives together included dogs and hunting. Hunting has always been a part of Earl's life, and it brought him no end of joy. Luke and Hildy were his first two dogs, well, the two that started it all, actually. And in addition to hunting, Earl was an extremely talented guide and a breeder of probably some of the most beautiful and talented dogs you will ever meet. He would guide groups of hunters on the Santa Fe Trail, and his breeding and his training abilities were well known. People throughout the entire United States would come to Earl for tips, and they would ask to buy his dogs. Some of his favorite days were spent with Virginia and their friends on hunting trips to Kansas and Montana, South Dakota, Arizona. And not only did Earl love his dogs, he was an avid golfer and an extremely talented photographer. Now, at one point, as far as the golf thing goes, he tried out for the professional circuit, missed it by just that much. Fortunately for all of us, God knows what God's doing. He played in any number of charity events throughout Colorado, and he loved to play golf with his friend Philip, and Virginia could get them into the golf course at the Air Force Academy. So that was great. There was absolutely no question that Earl was one of the most brilliant men you will ever meet. He had the mind of an engineer and a scientist. A few years ago, he put that great scientific mind to use, and he started to make a thing called worm tea. Now, for the uninitiated, worm tea is the concentrated liquid from, shall we say, worm compost and fertilizer. And they had customers from all over the United States. He would spend hours and days and weeks and months testing and comparing and looking into his little microscope and refining his product. Soon, they decided to branch out and to grow flowers and plants. And he used his engineering skills to build some of the most amazing greenhouses you will ever see. He had drip systems and he had timer lights, and if you went over to their house, you kind of walked through the table and you set your stuff down, you said hi to Virginia, and then you walked out the back door and he was showing you his stuff. Earl was so good at this. The CSU Extension Office has a Master Gardener program, and one of their classes was a trip over to Virginia and Earl's house to see how people set things up. And just so you know, our community garden at this church is almost directly related to the fact that they got to take a trip and see Earl's stuff. So we're connected in that way, even too. But as incredibly scientific as his mind was, his soul was that much more spiritual. He might use logic and deduction to build his greenhouses and develop his worm tea, but when it came to his relationship with God and the people around him, Earl led with his heart. Now, have you guys seen the TV show Saving Grace? It was on a while ago. It was a TNT thing. Holly Hunter played a woman named Grace Hanadarko, who was a hard-drinking, hard-living detective in Oklahoma City. And one night, she was driving her Porsche, and she runs over a guy and thinks that she's killed him. And in a moment of panic and terror that so many of us in this room know, with regret and desperation, she cried out, she begged for God's help. God sends her a rough and tumble flannel shirt wearing, tobacco spitting, unshaven, last chance angel named Earl. Earl was a last chance angel for a lot of people here in Pueblo, all over Colorado. There's a paragraph in a book that he read a lot that says, "We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling that we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but God was there. God was as much of a fact as we are. We found that great reality deep within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that God may be found." Earl guided people on that terrifying, exhilarating, life-changing, fearless search. In conversations on porches, during long walks, chats around the kitchen table. He helped countless people clear away the clutter that they had accumulated, that clutter that keeps the light of God's light from shining on our lives. Guided by Earl, people found that great reality deep within themselves, and because of that, their lives were saved. But Earl didn't just talk about God. Earl walked with God. Was he perfect? No. But he would tell you that perfection is the last thing that this journey has anything to do with. Through his selfless acts, through his courage to tell people the truth, and through his willingness to give all for his friends, Earl showed people what living a life of grace and acceptance and gratitude looked like. He was generous, he was kind-hearted, he was funny. His laugh was contagious. He had a dry sense of humor, and when he laughed or when he was feeling a bit mischievous, those bright blue eyes would sparkle like diamonds. And Earl was trustworthy. If Earl said he was going to do something, he did it. If he said he was going to be somewhere, he showed up. He showed up for the good times, and most importantly, he showed up through the bad times. But really, for Earl, there was no good and there was no bad. Things just were. Life was life, people were people, and our only job here was to help God's kids do what God's kids thought they needed to get done. Trust God, love people. It was really that simple. Now, I don't know who's got this whole life and afterlife thing right. Maybe Paul and Western Christianity have it right when they say that the idea is that God has given us all physical bodies of God's choosing, human, animal, celestial, and that God will also give us spiritual bodies in the form God chooses. Perhaps Eastern religions have it right with the belief that we return to this life over and over again, teaching and learning until there are no more lessons to learn. Perhaps the physicists have it right when they say that energy can't be destroyed, and so we might still feel Earl's energy surrounding us as a comfort in our sad moments, or as a celebrant in our joyful ones, or as an intuitive thought that guides us in our moments of indecision. I have a feeling, though, that Earl would probably side with those who care less about what happens next and more about what happens now. Earl lived for the moment. Earl lived in the moment. It's not that the future didn't matter or that plans weren't important. It's that Earl knew at the very bottom of his soul that the only time that really matters is this moment right now, the moment that we are living. Virginia and I were talking a few days ago, and she said, you know, I am not the same person I was before I met Earl. I used to be afraid, I used to be full of fear, but through Earl's life and through his humor, I don't live in fear today. There are a lot of us in this room that can say because of Earl Wood, we don't live in fear today. Those of us who are fortunate enough to know Earl, to be friends with Earl, we have all had our lives changed for the better, having known him. So now I would like to invite Earl's family to come up and share their stories about Earl.
I didn't know you knew this many people. I'm appalled. You know? Thanks for coming. I don't know very many stories about Earl that I can tell in church.
Amen.
They asked me to go back. My memory's not very good anymore. So I'll start when we first started hunting. We had 4 tenants. My father for safety reasons. You had to be able to cock it and pull the trigger and let it off. And you had to be able to do that 20 times in a row before you could shoot. So Earl got that accomplished. I don't know, he was probably 8, 9. And we had a place we went to, Beer Sisters Dike, between two lakes. It was all past shooting ducks. And my father never let you go without a lot of shells, but Earl was very bad. I mean, every time he went, he shot 3 or 4 boxes of shells. Anything was in range if it was within 400 yards or 500 yards. Most of the time when a small flock of ducks came by, Earl with his single shot could get 3 shots off. Didn't matter. You just shoot. One time I was quizzing him about this a little bit, and he said, well, if you shoot enough, one of them's going to fly into it. So, that was the start of a long-lasting career hunting. We did a lot of it, and fishing, and had a great time, But it was one of those things, it wasn't like golf or AA, things that he really practiced. He never learned how to shoot. His fishing, it was kind of shaky. We did a lot of it, most of the time you had to stand there and tell him where to do it. It wasn't a big thing to Earl. But we had a great time. Somehow, through the years, the shotgun thing changed. It seemed like every time we got 2.5 miles from the car, Earl would stand there and look at you and he says, you got any more shells? These are for you.
Yes, I am. And work.
Thanks for the great presentation of my brother Earl. Thank you all as well. We've learned many things about my brother Earl in the last week since he's passed, and it's been extremely moving, and I appreciate that. Oh, it's really great to be able to honor the life that he shared with all of us, and I appreciate you being here. But in sharing a few stories about growing up with Earl, he grew up in Littleton, Colorado, as most all of you know, son of Dr. Wilbur V. Wood, better known as Abe Wood, and his mom, Helen Wood, and his 5 siblings: older brother Bill, older sister Mary, middle sister Marty, and little sister Linda. We were a very close and connected family as a result of the parenting that we had and the togetherness that we shared as a family. And Earl obviously learned how to give that back within his own world and his own way. When he was young, he was always very active. And when my mom passed away, we were sitting at her dining room table, and he said to me, "You were always more of a mom than Mom was to me." And I looked at him and I said, "Earl, I was the oldest girl and I was told what to do, but she was the director of the program." And I said, "I had a big job to get you lined out." But anyway, in his hurry-scurry to get out into the world and get his day going, I mean, he whipped his clothes on, he never had his shoes tied, and he was out the door uncombed, and we all know how Earl presented himself in the public. And my mom would be shouting, "Earl Wood, you get back in here and get yourself together." But of course, that never happened. I remember when he was really tiny, we were living there on Littleton Boulevard, and Littleton was a different place back in those days, but Earl was out in the yard playing, and he just kind of wandered off like Earl would do. And we went out, and where had Earl gone to? And we had this black lab, Queenie, and Queenie just kind of trotted along behind him. He went down a couple blocks from the house, and she just kind of kept circling him and making him come back home. And he got back home with that dog's guidance to our house. Mom used to be a homemaker, and she sewed a lot of our clothes and things. And there's a photo of us when she had made us little jumpers that were red and black for the girls and matching vests for the boys. And we were supposed to be downstairs lining up for our Christmas pictures. And Earl looked at that picture later and he said, "Why didn't you guys get me together better for this photo?" Because, of course, his shirt was untucked and he had his engineer boots on and his pant leg was up the side of his leg, and so he didn't have that together. So I think we all remember those pictures of Earl. And I remember the engineer boots because Mom thought, well, he's never going to wear these out like he did every other pair of shoes that he got. But he did. I mean, he could wear out a pair of shoes so fast, it was unbelievable. Bill shared some hunting stories. I didn't go hunting with the guys very often, but I went down to La Junta one time with them hunting, and they gave me, I don't know, Bill, what was it, a 410? I don't know. But I had a gun.
The same one he learned how to shoot.
The same one Earl learned how to shoot. But we're down there, and we're all spread out going across the field, and a pheasant gets up, and it's closest to me, and they're all going, "Shoot, Mary, shoot!" So I pick up my gun, and I shoot, and this pheasant is like way off, and the pheasant flies down out of the sky. And I'm going, little did they know that pheasant hit a telephone line and came down. And they were all just standing there with their jaws dropped. Anyway, I think Bill shared the stories about he and Dad fly fishing, and I guess Earl probably wasn't quite as good as Bill and Dad were at that fly fishing, but boy, he loved being out there. When I went with him, my job was to catch those Helgramites, is that what we called them? Those awful things under the rocks, but that was my job, was to catch the Helgramites for them to go fishing with. Anyway. When Dad passed away, Earl said he was so pissed off.
Oh, that's fine.
And angry because his dad left him, because he just lost his best friend. And Dad was that to Earl, because Earl was one of these people that he could try to tell us something, but you had to keep digging to get what he meant out of it sometimes. But Dad could listen to him and know what he was saying and help him with that process. But I'm sure you all heard him say, "You know," he'd be talking, and then he'd say, "You know," and he'd go, "No, I don't know." But you just have to try to figure and follow it. Oh gosh, I'm sure you all that went through school at Littleton High School may remember Mrs. Fickthorne. Mrs. Fickthorne sat in the attendance office at the high school, and I happened to be working in the attendance office for part of my time in high school. And Earl took every advantage of that he could. So he would be tardy coming back from recess or from lunch, and he would come running up to the attendance office and say, "Mary, give me a pass or an excuse so I can get back into class without getting into trouble." And I go, "Earl, you're going to get me in trouble." trouble. But of course, we'd fill out that pass and he'd get back into class. So there he was, always figuring out a way. In his last years, as all of you got to share, Earl's backyard. I mean, he was amazing. He was amazing. Anthony was there often, helping Earl out with all those projects in the backyard. But he started out with the worms, and that was going to be how he was going to make his money. And it was those worm castings that were the valuable part of those worms. And, you know, they started out with a screen and a shovel, separating the worms and getting those castings. But it didn't take long before they got tired of that shoveling business and I come down to visit. And Earl's created this basket with a motor on it that goes around in circles, and you put the worms inside the basket and it twirls around and the castings fall out below. And I just go, wow, here's my mad scientist out here in the backyard creating these things. Now, whether they ever turned into any kind of success to help him or not, he didn't really care. You know, he did not care. But anyway, I thought he was amazing. And of course, then later the microscopes came into place so he could look at the organic teas that he was brewing to put on yards and flowers and plants to see if they had enough microorganisms going around inside there. And he'd bring his microscope and he'd put a sample on there and go, look, look, and he'd look in there and he'd see these little things going around. But in support of Brother Earl, Linda and I decided, sure, we'll spread some of that tea on our pastures over there. She's got quite a bit of hay and I've got quite a bit of hay over there. And so he would haul all of his supplies and his brewers over to Montrose, and we'd brew tea, and then it was calculating just how to spread that tea onto the fields. And I mean, you had to have the little nozzle set right so you get the right percentages, and he calculated all of that. But one of the later times he came over, he said, Mary, I want you to find some local farmers around there that might be interested in my tea. And so I said, okay, we'll go around. So Earl comes over, and you can imagine how Earl looks, because when he's working on his brewing, he looks like a madman. Anyway, I live in conservative Montrose, and the farming community over there. So I said, Earl, I think before we go some of these places, I'm going to give you a haircut, because I mean, you had that look. So I get out my dog clippers and curl up his hair. You know, I just give him a haircut, cut his hair, and he just sits there. And so we go around to these farms, and I said, I also think maybe you should put your teeth in before we go. You know that vacant spot that he had in his front door there where he lost his teeth. Poor Marty, the dental hygienist of the family, and Earl's tooth care. Anyway, we got back home after going to visit some people, and we had a great day together. And he said, you know, I really thought my look might have been better than what you gave me. He said, I really looked like Einstein. You know, Earl, you were right. I just did not have it. And I guess that's what I loved about my brother Earl, is he was never the mold that I was. He was always outside that mold, and a free thinker and a free spirit. And I think, you know, he taught me a lot that there's things in life that are so much more important than being ordered and into the mold as we look at it. I think, you know, in his younger years, he was a great athlete. I mean, he showed it in so many things that he did. He was a mentor, and especially in these later years, we had some turmoil within our own family, and he became a mentor for all of us in helping us get through some struggled times. Whew, the number of people he's helped through AA in the 32 years, we've met a lot of you, and it's been extremely moving. Thanks for sharing those stories with us. Mom always baked cookies. And he'd walk in the house, and the first thing he'd do is he'd open the lid to the cookie jar, and by golly, there better be cookies in there. So after Mom passed away, he decided, since I was the oldest, that that was mine. So he came over, and the first time he said, "Where's my ginger snaps?" I don't know. So Earl's ginger snaps are back there on the back table for everybody to have a little sample of. I got up yesterday morning to bake them, and I never made them the same. They were our great Aunt Marge's recipe, and they were always good. But I always add a little of this. But I sent him a box of them for Christmas. And when I called and I was on the phone with Virginia, he's in the background and he's saying, "They weren't very good." And so I'm saying to Virginia, "So what was the problem?" And he's saying, "Did she use whole wheat flour?" And I said, "No, I didn't use whole wheat flour." I said, "But I probably put in too much cinnamon, because I like cinnamon." And he said, "Yeah, I guess that was it." So anyway, I tried to get him just right this time. I'm going to miss him a lot. That incredible humor, that twinkle in his eyes, and that smile are something that I'm going to always hold, but I'm really going to miss that a lot. I'd like to ask my siblings and family to join me on the stage here. Earl loved to sing, and we did road trips together back and forth to our home in Minnesota, and we sang most of the way back and forth from Minnesota. But today we're going to sing, and I'd like all of you to join in with us if you can. "Mine eyes have seen the glory." You ready, guys? Ready? "Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. You want to do one more verse? Yeah. All right. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with the glory of his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. His truth is marching on. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Thank you all.
Okay. Well, Brother Bill, Brother Mary, what a wonderful. I'm your sister, Mary. Yeah. What did I call you? Oh, Sister Mary. It's a hard act to follow. Before I start my script, I just wanted to tell one story about Earl. When I was in high school, listen, this guy was strapping, he was handsome, he was athletic, and he looked like Paul Newman. So all my girlfriends would come to me and say, "Can you get me a date with your brother?" And I would say, "I don't think so." He's in love. And he was in love with the mother of his 2 children, Chris and Jeff. And she was a wonderful, wonderful woman, and they were a wonderful couple while it lasted. Now, for the real beginning. My brother Earl liked and loved me. I'm so lucky. We were friends, the middle child together, just a touch over a year apart. So close, yet so far apart at times. He was a spiritual man, a seeker, a big-time helper. We both found AA, and it changed our lives. We shared good and bad times, but persevered to find reconciliation. I am so grateful to have had him in my life. I'm grateful for all of them. Life is so fragile and fleeting. I will always cherish the memories and lessons from my big brother Earl. Here's a poem for Jenny and Earl that represents to me their love. It's by William Auden. It's called "Stop All the Clocks, Cut Off the Telephones." Stop all the clocks, cut off all the telephones. Prevent the dog from barking with a juicy bone. Silence the pianos, and with muffled drum, bring out the coffin, let the mourners come. Let aeroplanes circle, moaning overhead, scribbling on the sky the message, he is dead. Put crepe bows round the white mix of public doves. Let traffic policemen wear black cotton gloves. He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest. My noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought love would last forever. I was wrong. The stars are not wanted now. Put out every one. Pick up the moon, dismantle the sun, pour away the ocean, sweep up the wood, for nothing now can ever come to any good. I don't know that I believe in that last line at all, because Earl was such an optimist, and he gave so much good. I feel like it's just cellular with me right now, and I can't stop thinking about him. You know, his presence is with me, and I am overwhelmed with joy. To have all you people here to celebrate his life with us means so very much, and I just thank you all for coming.
I didn't prepare anything, I never do. My Earl, kind of a mess, you know, but I just was, Earl really loved to gamble. And so I comes rushing down to the racetrack, and I have this horse running, Magical Twist, and I really didn't think he had that much chance. And Earl bets like, got $100 or something, and then the horse wins. And I go, and I know he loved to gamble, but I think he did it more to support me. Just walks in the door, this is one of Linda's horses, I'm gonna bet on it, you know. That's the kind of guy he was, you know, and he just shared so much with all of us, and, you know, we're all gonna miss him, and it's great to see so many family members that I haven't seen for so long, and, you know.
Can you tell them about Mr. Earl?
Yeah, we have, there's several Earls in my family. There was Big Earl, who was my Uncle Earl, who was a famous cardiologist. then there was Earl, and he was little Earl always. And then I had a cousin named Earl Andrew, who was Uncle Earl's son, but I named a horse after Earl. I've been waiting for the perfect horse. I'm scared to death to name any horses after my family members, because what if they're a real dudgy? But anyway, Earl's horse is little Earl, and he ran on the day after Earl passed, and he ran a really good third. And he's won, and I'm waiting. I have two just gorgeous weanling colts, now yearlings, and one of them's going to be Earl the Pearl. And he's always there, for me, with the horses. He just loved them. He loved to hear about them. He didn't know what the heck I was talking about. I'd tell a lot of pedigrees, this, that, but he was with me on it. So that's just our guy. So thank y'all very much for coming. It was wonderful.
I just wanted her to tell you about when she called Earl up to tell him that she'd named this horse after him. He took it that she was giving him this horse. When he found out that she'd only named him after him, he called me up and he said, "What do you think of that?" And I said, "I think it's an honor, Earl." And he said, I said, "Well, would you like the vet bills and the feed bills and all that?" And he said, "Oh, I guess you're right."
Yeah, I really had to talk him out of at the Silver Cup sale not buying this horse. No race horses, or we'll watch them, we'll bet on them, whatever. He cashed a lot of gambles on our horses, which was good, but I was a bad influence. Bad. I couldn't help myself. This is a good one. So he bet a lot more. One more time, Jenny and I went to the races together. I don't know where Earl was, but he wasn't with us. And Jenny and I split like a $2 bet on a long shot that I kind of had an idea about, because he did not finish the previous race, and so his odds were just. So Jenny and I made like $70, and we go home. We're like, "Yeah, this is what we did, Earl." And he goes, $2. Throwing it all out there.
Y'all want another story?
Yeah.
Sure.
Another one.
You can stand it?
Yeah. Sweet.
When my daughters were growing up, Jen and I were going on a vacation. Elisa was about 3 years old. We left her there for a week or 10 days. I can't remember. We get back, and this child had to survive on ice cream and Oreo cookies. Okay? It comes out later on that they'd run out of ice cream. So at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, my brother loads her up and hauls her to Baskin Robbins. They get more. So my second child felt she'd been cheated. So we had a Christmas thing, and I can't remember, she was probably 3 or 4 years old, and bringing this stuff up to Earl. So Earl takes her home. First time she'd ever left home. And we were concerned that she wouldn't make the night. Have to go pick her up. Well, that was bull. The child nobody calls in the morning because they're on their second gallon of ice cream. That's the way he was. You'd ask him about it, and Earl, kids have to eat something besides ice cream. They don't like anything else. That's what they wanted. Let's eat it. Thanks, guys, for coming.
Oh, if I can do this now, we'll have to find out. I remember seeing her all coming in all scared. some point when he realized that something needed to happen in his life, a little different than it was happening. And I remember a good old friend of his named Pete waltzed him into this big meeting room of people, and I thought, and I'm looking at him in his eyes going, woo! I mean, they're just like flashing and crashing around. And I guess what he had done that night is he called Pete and said, "How did you get sober?" And Pete said, "I'll be right there." And from that moment of Pete saying to him, "I'll be right there," pretty much, maybe a few exceptions, pretty much, Earl has always been right there. Certainly for me, for people in my family, when my mom was dying and my stepdad was dying, and he's always been there. And so have his family. That's all I have.
Thanks, Regina.
At this time, I'd like to invite Bud up to share.
This isn't my long suit. And Earl was my go-to guy. And, set the bar high for all of us. I was given this on my 1-year birthday. It's probably the most treasured gift I have. It's 2 monkeys sitting around doing what we do. And this picture was drawn by Virginia's mother. And I cry when I read this by myself. So bear with me. It's easy to have ears for the voice of reason. 'Tis easy to dance for many a season. 'Tis easy to follow the beaten path. Oh, how easy it is to build pyramids of reason and to dance with the devil. To let a heart be open like that of a lotus. To follow a spirit out to the edge of the abyss. To ask for the courage to land on the wings of an eagle, like their newborn. To be given faith to know what I see is an illusion. To have protection of a child in the womb. To be free to dance, to sing, and to love with God in his magical creation. Happy birthday, love, Earl G.